Today we talk about professional GMing. All right, Charles, you ready for today?
hmm
Wait a minute. Something's different.
It's the glasses.
Yeah, it's probably the glasses. Yeah, it can't be anything else.
No, 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 never.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What is Tabletop, where I, Frank, a GM of 10 years, talk with usually a co-host who is not as well known in being able to run. But today we have a different Charles who we're talking to.
Hi, I'm Charles. Most people call me Chuck. I have been DMing for about a decade, professionally for going on 6 years. Actually, we're over 6 years now at this point, called Malve Studios, where we contract out other professional DMs. So that way you guys can have a similar experience that you would have at my table, but not with me.
I've had friends dip into either being a online GM or trying to find a group online. And those are always like the more like difficult things. Like how do you guys even go about finding people in the first place who are even willing to GM for total strangers?
It turns out that there's a lot of people that want to do this for as a profession.
Mhm.
A lot of people that have been DMing for a while think that they've done a pretty good job of being well, your favorite GM.
Right.
And so they decide they probably heard either about Start Playing Games, or they heard about the guy like me. I heard about a guy out on the East Coast that had started making some money running games for like birthday parties and for some businesses and stuff like that. And it just kind of crosses your mind of, maybe I could like make a little bit more money
Mhm.
doing this and maybe support my friend's game in the same man.
Yeah, I've definitely had people come up to me because I've run one shots or something for them and like, Frank, you could do this professionally. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I don't know how the heck to do that.
Yeah. It's definitely a tricky minefield to walk.
So do you guys seek people out? Are you like taking applications? Like what is the process in that?
So for us, the process is we will announce things on social media, or people will hear about us, or we will put like a job posting up on LinkedIn. The first thing we did was we put up a job posting up on LinkedIn, and we maxed out the freemium version of how many people applied to that within like 17 hours. I think it
Oh,
was
wow.
crazy. There's a lot of people that want to do this for money, and I think that they're good enough to do so. So the process for us is pretty simple. You find out about us, you send me an email, talk about your experience. We'll meet up over Zoom or Discord or some sort of video chat, and kind of talk about your experience with the different games that you've run, how often you run them, how long you've been DMing professionally or GMing professionally. And then after that, the way that I typically put it is me and my friends you're going to have to run like a 3-hour one shot for us, and you're expected to hit some things. And if you don't, well, that's on you. But we will
Mhm.
judge you mercilessly about whether or not you're a good enough DM or GM to be a part of us.
I mean, yeah, especially if money's involved, you kind of have to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the whole like people who are the best actor in their hometown, but then they go to LA and they find out like, oh no, I'm
Yeah.
average. And it's like, I wonder how many people are like that too, where it's like, oh, I'm one of the best GMs I've ever played with, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think even just being able to be like, hey, we've noticed like if you were to, you know, this is where you land, this is the stuff you dove, here's some like critiques you can take. I feel like, at least for me, I am the kind of person who likes, getting and receiving criticism and
Yeah.
learning from it. So I feel like even that is a very beneficial thing.
Yeah, and we usually do that too. After everything's said and done, there's an opportunity for two different auditions with us. So like if you came through and you were just missing the mark on like my like not just mine but our expectations for, I don't know, knowledge of rules, or there's a certain expectation that we have for how you handle a virtual tabletop or
Hmm.
in person stuff. I'll send that back to you guys. I'll send that back to you as the auditioner, and let you decide if you want to make those changes or not. Because it might be something that you're just not comfortable doing, and that's okay. If you're not comfortable doing some of the things that we require from our professional DMs, we're not going to harp on you about it. We're just
Hmm.
going to say this is probably not going to work out for us because we have a certain level of, like, a certain standard that we expect to hit.
Now, obviously, everyone has different styles. Everyone enjoys different kinds of, things here and there. There's some people who can tackle more nuanced um,
Hmm
topics, and then there's other people who are like, nope, I just want to punch and shoot things. Where can I punch and shoot things? Um,
Right.
is that part of your processes too? Is to be like, okay, you are much more mechanically focused, or you're much more role play focused, or you're much more this or that.
We don't just put DMs out there. We bring people in and we see what they like and we compare that to the strong points of the DMs that we brought in.
Okay.
So like the DMs or GMs that we've got on our roster, we know what their strong points are. They have to hit a bare minimum, though, for us. There's some things like you don't have to excel at everything. There are some people that excel with rules. There are some people that excel with exploration. There are some people that excel at the role play side of things and have 30,000 voices that I definitely don't have. Like it just varies from person to person, and that's completely understandable. So we tend to we have all of our notes on our side about which DMs do which things well. And whenever you come to, as a client, as a player, whenever you come to Malve Studios, you'll fill out a form. And it's kind of hokey, it's kind of jokey, because I'm definitely going to contact you afterward to kind of like really clarify some things. But if you really like combat, I guarantee you we've got somebody that's really good at handling combat, that makes it really dynamic, that has, the environment is going to be ever changing, or like the social aspect of it is going to be that much more pressing. It just depends. So like whatever it is that you think you're going to enjoy, I will take you and I will put you in a game with the guy that does that the best, or gal, or them. I don't know. Whatever. Whoever's going to do that the best, we're going to put you with them.
I have never ran a module in my life. 10 years of doing this, and I've always looked at modules for like inspiration. And
Yeah.
usually I look at them and I'm like, this is really cool. I don't like how constrictive it is.
Mm-hmm.
We did a one shot for a play test we were doing, and I was doing the module that was in it because I wanted to make sure everything was going right. And my players could tell instantly. They're like, wait a minute, it's different.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's also part of it as well. Like, can
Yeah.
you run a module? Can you improv? Can you do your own thing?
To a degree, it's less of can you and more of are you willing to. So like we don't just offer long form campaigns. We offer drop-ins. We offer stuff where people can. It's low risk. You
Okay.
come, you show up, you play the game, you move on. If you didn't like it, you go away, or you try somebody else. One of the two. If you loved it, you stick around and you keep playing in that same one week after week after week. And then eventually, like my first game that I started whenever I first started professionally DMing, I was running Dungeon of the Mad Mage because we just needed something that was just high combat, get people in, get people moving, and then kind of see how it goes from there. And that group, that turned into a group within like, I want to say it was like 2 months. They were already tired of Dungeon of the Mad Mage by that 2 month point, and they were like, "Give me something better, Chuck. Give me what you can do." And I'm like, "Well, I can absolutely do that. Let's talk about it." So there needs to be some willingness to do a module. You can do it your way, but because it's kind of that West Marches style, it doesn't really matter too much. You know what I mean?
Not to tangent real quick, but I had a friend of mine run Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and he was notorious for, you know, going a little too hard on combats intentionally.
Yeah.
We like finished the section we wanted to do, but we still had a little bit of time. So he's like, "Oh, I'll run part of Dragon Heist. Why not?" And he looks at it and he's like, "Oh, in the first session, you fight a Mind Flayer. Well, that's at level 1. So in level 5, characters could take 2 Mind Flayers." And then he proceeded to double Cone of Coldust, killing the entire party.
Yeah.
Right. And he then looked back and was like, "Oh." Right. I mean, like, again, I think every GM has had moments of, oh, this is too strong. Am I going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to reel it back? Am I going to be able to recover it? And then obviously you have some people who are like, I just want to play this character forever. If they die, please just let me bring them back. And then you have other
Yeah.
people who are like, no, this is what's going to happen. We TPK'd. You've got to come up with a good story. So I'm sure that's also part of the process. But jumping to the player perspective,
Yeah.
why would players like what's the enticing thing for players to use your site?
Well, I think we should answer a different question first. So, like, that's a great question. We'll get to it. I think we
Okay.
should start with what does it mean to be a professional DM?
Okay.
And why would you want to hire a professional DM? That question, that set of questions has to be quantified by what is not a professional DM.
Hmm.
and what is a professional DM. And so that difference alone, like, how about you answer that question? What would you expect from a professional DM?
I mean, to some extent, they have to understand the system they're running. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they have to, rules have to come up and they have to be able to be like, this is how it's ruled. Or at the very least, say, this is how I'm ruling it. But
Okay.
the ability to make a rules decision very quickly, I think is
Yeah.
really important. And then to recognize what the players are enjoying and like to, you know, move along with that and make sure like, okay, they're enjoying this. Oh, these players, I haven't given them that much spotlight. I got to make sure they get some. I got to understand like, how is this working? Is there some conflict between the players that maybe we
Sure.
can expand or not, being able to read the party that you're running the game for, I think is also a huge thing as well.
Is there anything else that you can think of that would be considered, that you would quantify as professional level versus hobbyist?
Yeah, they make money.
That is a
Yeah.
common thread of thoughts. Let me put it to you this way. Let's start, instead of a virtual tabletop, let's talk about in-person games.
Mhm.
If you paid somebody to show up and run a game for you, you wouldn't expect the dry erase marker
No.
mat and Mancala beads. Thank you, Brennan Lee Mulligan. But you would expect, probably at minimum, printed out battle maps that are pretty, that you got from whatever website or from whatever Patreon you enjoyed. You would expect, at minimum, a beautiful landscape, some semblance of terrain, miniatures that have been painted to, at minimum, tabletop use.
Right.
The other part of that is that you're absolutely correct on the handling a party, handling a table. And you've got to be able to handle a table both in person and online. So you've got to be able to know the difference between talking over each other at the table and talking over each other online. You've got to be able to control the situation. You got to be able to encourage people to, if you're online and they're trying to talk over each other, take it to the chat room. Like, you've probably got a Discord somewhere that you can work with, or you've got a group chat in your phone that you can work with, or something like that. So you've got to be able to
Mhm.
handle that. But if you paid someone to show up, you're not going to want just a white room where there's no music. You don't even have a DM
True.
scream up. You have expectations for the minimum value that you're wanting to get out of it.
Mhm.
So for us, the expectation is to use some semblance of terrain. We've got it set up to where right now I do 3D printing and painting as well. So we are starting to kind of mass produce these terrain tiles called dungeon blocks. It's a
Ooh.
modular system.
Yeah.
That you can really kind of make multiple tiers, like 3 tiers of a battle map. It's really
Mhm.
cool. But we paint those. We let you guys make your own minis. We bring in other minis that we've found online that we like, or that we've designed ourselves and painted up and printed out and made sure that they are at the highest quality we could bring. Not a single one of my DMs is going to be playing music off of their phone. They're at minimum going to be using a Bluetooth speaker. If there isn't a room that you've been able to rent out at your local LGS or at
Right.
your local pub that has board game bar, and that is a board game bar, we expect there to be some semblance of ambiance that will be ever present in the room, not just, the tiny little speaker on your phone or laptop. There's going to be an expectation for buying up lighting. You can get these 2 little, hold on.
Ooh.
I got these 2 little bitty lights that can do every color. Having this in the room with the little remote changes everything about ambiance. Lighting changes everything. Being able to move your lights. This a set of 2 was $20. You can go and get as many as you need for whatever room you're planning on hosting in. I have
Yeah.
them in the background whenever I'm running my games, because this is my setup for whenever I run games. You're going to
Right.
see colors in the background change according to the scene. So that way, whenever you look at me and you're listening to my words, you're a little bit deeper into it than before. Your DM is going to be able to handle more nuanced subjects than just they
Mhm.
say this, they say that,
Right.
they react this way. Being able to get into the descriptive narrative of, when you swing the sword, you're doing more than just, you hit him, that hits, that kind of thing. You're going to want to go
Mhm.
into, you're going to want to channel, unfortunately for all of us, your inner Matthew Mercer, however big or small that may be,
Right.
and really get into your descriptions. When when that orc swings that sword at you, I better know exactly how jagged that blade is and whether or not the muscles are rippling as the blade is being swung. It's one of those things that there has to be an understanding of what narrative storytelling is doing in a verbal context, not just in an overall story base. You need to be able to hit those beats moment by moment to really bring your people in. And having all of these things at the table, having your modular dungeon, having
Mhm.
your highly painted minis, having your light that kind of fills the room, having the sound that isn't just coming from a little tin can is going to really kind of bring people in. The same thing can be said for online games too. You need to have a virtual tabletop that you can put a lot of production value into. Having the free tier of Roll20 is great and all. Having, your Owlbear Rodeo is great, but we here at Malve expect you to be using something either along the lines of the new Project Sigil that is finally out of NDA at minimum, or you've got Foundry set up with all the fancy lights and all the music that they can turn up and down themselves. Custom made tokens that they've put onto the map. Um, I personally, I don't use other people's maps. They're not the ones that I make are not spectacular, but they're better than average because I practiced at it. I would expect if I show up at your table, you've either got one that you paid for because you're not great at it and haven't practiced it as much as I have, or you're making your own custom battle maps and overall maps, or you've got scenes that you've taken images off of whatever artist you like that you've been paying for. You put that up in the background and kind of make it look a little bit spookier with the lighting system in place. Like, you can really set a scene for people to look at to really kind of help get past that aphantasia issue that a lot of people actually have and don't really talk about a lot. If I'm paying you to run a game for me, I expect you to do more than theater of the mind. It's okay from time to time whenever your DM or whenever your players get a little off the beaten path, but you should have something prepared for the main meat of your campaign. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the difference between our expectations of what a hobbyist does and what a professional does. And so and that's not to knock on hobbyist DMs. If you're having fun with your friends, if you're playing your game and you're having a blast, and everybody at your table lauds over how well you did your kobold voice versus your goblin voice, which there may or may not be nuance, depends on who you are. Then good for you. Keep it up. Keep having fun with your table. The problem is that most people that are looking for a professional DM either A, are just looking for a group that they haven't been able to get a hold of before and are trying to avoid an LGS, or B, had a really bad experience with an LGS table, or just their friends are not as good as they expect because they've been listening to podcasts, they've been listening to actual plays, they've been watching actual plays. You aren't necessarily going to bring an actual play attitude or performance to the table, but the DM should. Now then, the other side of this, there are some hobbyist DMs that do the work like a professional and don't want to get paid for it because they don't feel like they should, or they enjoy it too much, and that's perfectly okay. It's kind of like the difference between working on your car in your garage and working on your buddy's cars, and going and starting your own shop and working on cars for everybody else and starting some sort of affiliation with a group and really kind of working on their groups, working on their cars a lot, or their trucks, depending on who you are and where you're at. There's that difference between the two. This hobbyist over here that's working on those cars may be really good at tearing apart an engine and putting it back together and really shining up the chrome and making it look beautiful on the outside and inside, but they don't want to get paid for it because it's how they relax. I'm not gonna say you shouldn't be a hobbyist DM. If you like it, keep doing it.
I have noticed that anytime I'm running a one shot for the first time for anybody, like this is the first time they're playing, I'm like, well, let me get my Dwarven Forge ready. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get the best stuff I got
Yeah.
because that's what's going to make them be like, oh, this is cool. And like, oh,
Oh, this is what we're doing, huh? I didn't
yeah.
know that this was a thing.
I think the custom minis is a really awesome thing because like the amount of times players are like, oh, I got to make this custom. Like
Hmm.
I just started a new campaign and my player's like, I want to play a grung, but I bought a one you paint and it's a terrible paint job, but I painted it and this is what he looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I feel like over the internet, that stuff's pretty simple. Like you can be anywhere, your players
Hmm.
can be anywhere. That's pretty simple. But you're talking about like you're able to do in-person stuff. Now, is that only at like the location you're at? Are you able to maybe have them like be like, "Hey, you're all in this state. Are you guys going to be able to meet up at this location?" Stuff like that. Like how do you coordinate that?
So, as it stands right now, we only serve a couple of locations across the nation right now. We are national. We have people in Ohio. Not Ohio. Yeah, no, we have people in Ohio. We have people in LA. We have people in the Twin Cities, and we got people down here in Austin. Um, we can do in-person games pretty quickly in those locations. I can get the miniatures sent out. I can get the stuff printed out and sent over to those DMs as soon as they need it. It might take about a month before you get into your game in person, but if there are a group of people that are in that state, I've already talked to all my GMs, I've already talked to all my DMs, and whenever it comes to an in-person game, the charge is a little bit higher for the production value of it, and we've got to be able to get the people back and forth from those locations. But we are more than like the end goal, big picture wise. I would like Malve Studios to have a DM at minimum, one DM in every state. Just so that way, no matter where you go, you know that you're going to get that high quality at the table if you want it, just because this is how it's been for you. So it's that's the end goal. Right now, I don't know that we would be able to go over state lines unless the DM is really like really working on it without some semblance of an upcharge,
Right.
just to kind of like make up for housing and stuff like that. Because our system is not set up to make a lot of money for the company. We're not meant like the DM gets paid the most. They get I want to say I think we only take like 15% of each seat in total. So they make the lion's share of what we charge. Um, and I don't want to take that money out of their pocket to make them pay for their hotel room and flights or whatever it may be. Where you know, so that's kind of that's my thought process on doing stuff in states and kind of doing those in-person games. We're working on communicating with LGSs that have rooms to rent to kind of like in the places where those DMs are locally. So that way we can kind of work things out where it's expected that they are going to be renting out that room every month or every week or, however many days a week that they need to. So that way we can work with those guys to really kind of up their their drive in. They're like, if that's part of what we want to do is not just promote professional DMs but promote the community at large. We want to be able to we want to be able to drive people into your local game stores. We want them to see what you have on display, so that way maybe, hey, I've seen all these minis online. I've seen these dice online. There's some similar ones over there in that glass case. You know what? Maybe I'm going to pick up that set of dice this time. Like I just want to cultivate the space a little bit more whenever it comes to in-person games. Not to mention finding a professional GM in person is nigh impossible
Hmm.
in in today's age. It's like after COVID hit, whenever everybody was at home, it drove up online play through the roof. There are so many people playing online games now, and there are so fewer people that were playing in-person games, and they were just making do. But now people are wanting to get back in person again. They're wanting to play together. They want to see each other like roll those dice. They don't want to click a button and get the random number generator. They want to be able to roll the physical. It's one of those things. So it's something that we're moving towards. It's something that I would like to impress, but yeah, it's in a matter of accessibility. Online is usually the easiest way to get into a game. So
So I'm sure there's someone who's like, "Oh, I didn't hear my state. Okay, I'm gonna reach out to Chuck
yeah.
real quick, try to get that
Mm-hmm.
locked in." So obviously you have Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also there's some implication of like other systems. Is that just I'm assuming per GM, or are you also like, "Hey, we make sure all of our people we hire can do this system and this system."
That is a great and wonderful question. So I typically, if I have a DM come in, if I have a GM come in and they audition, I have already talked to them about the games that they know how to run. I am not likely going to take on a GM or DM that doesn't know at least one other system that they're excited about,
Okay.
and are willing to learn those rules. Because I know that the indie TTRPG space is really kind of growing a lot. They're like, I mean, we had the Zine month, what, last month, right? I think. So there's a lot of people that are actively making these new games. I know that I don't expect all of my GMs and DMs to know every single system that exists. I don't expect everybody to learn all the minutia of Pathfinder 2e. I don't expect them to know all the fear mechanics of the Alien TTRPG. I don't expect them to know even, a Court of Blades from a couple of Drakes. I wouldn't expect them to know all those rules. I would expect them to be willing to be open. We have GMs though that are more than willing to run Girl by Moonlight. They are willing to run Thirsty Sword Lesbians. They know those rules well. They know, Pathfinder First Edition pretty well, but they're still learning Second Edition pretty well. Or they know, I've got one that's really excited about running Cypher games, which is kind of an odd one in some scenarios because that is more, theater of the mind focused. But if people want to play it, I've got someone for that. It's a matter of I know what they know now, and whatever they get excited about, I will help them get the materials to learn that rule set too, but I'm not going to force them to know anything. It's easier to get somebody into a D&D game with different styles than it is to get somebody into I don't know, looking at my shelf now. It's a little bit harder to get people into an Alien game because it's going to be short, and it's going to be short term because people die in like the first session. So,
Right.
It's the expectation is you don't know everything. I'm not going to make you know everything, but I expect you to know more than the average DM or GM. You should be able to run at least one other system.
Is there any advice for someone like, let's say like maybe you guys aren't looking for anyone else right now, or maybe they go through your program and you decide like, hey, this is something you need to work on. What's one piece of advice that you would give towards anyone who's looking to professionally GM?
One piece. I've got so much advice. Which
Yeah,
one is the best?
one.
One. Be okay handling people that are not your typical player at your table.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to
That's
run
fair.
into a lot of people that they may not be playing in the style that you want to run, but they're here because you can do it. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for people that kind of set you off your game a little bit.
Yeah, being able to adapt. I mean, that's just in general a great piece of advice for any
Yeah.
GM.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate you, Chuck, for coming on. We thank you. Where can we'll have obviously the link and all that in the
Yeah,
description, but
of
go
course.
ahead and plug your stuff one more time. Where can we find you?
So we are Malve Studios, MALVE Studios.com. That's our main website, but we're on Blue Sky, we're on Facebook, we're working our way towards Reddit eventually. We have our Discord that's available. All those links are on our website if you really need to go digging for them.
Yeah, I mean, I've only ever heard glowing recommendations from you guys. So,
Thank you.
well, we appreciate you for joining us. Next week, our Chuck will be back.
I don't
Hopefully,
know what you're
maybe.
talking about. I just have glasses.
You're right. I know you just started this business without me ever knowing.
You're welcome.
Of course. Until next time, though, everybody, stay witty.